So VIVA has the great advantage of being right down in the Whitby Harbor, just off the marina. So it is a lovely space to be at. It's also really close to amenities.
Hi, I'm Agnes Stawicki, Managing Editor with Comfort Life. We're speaking with insiders from Canada's leading retirement communities and care providers to uncover insights to community lifestyle, care, culture, and leadership. This includes insights from residents, family members, and administration. This is the Comfort Life Insider Perspective.
It's hard to narrow it down to just one or two things. I guess if I put it all together, it would be the compassion, the loveliness of the staff, the teamwork, the camaraderie, and the fact that they always put her first, in my opinion, but they put everybody first. Everybody there believes that. So it was just the right place for my mom. She was there from the day it opened until April of this year, so just over a year. Well, certainly she moved in just prior to a pandemic, so that was pretty uncertain times. It was great when she first moved in, and then as the government started to change things, VIVA really came to play when they treated everybody with the best respect they could. So they went above and beyond, even when people had to be isolated in their rooms for almost 3 months. They were around, they checked on people, they were right there. And that was indicative of everything that happened at VIVA. The day my mom moved in, she had but she had signed her rental agreement off a floor plan. And even though I had marked out in her house what that floor plan would look like, she was sure it was much smaller than what she had agreed to. And so on the very day my mom is moving in a building that's not complete, the staff said to her, "We will take you around the building. If you want a different suite, we'll make that happen today before you settle. We have suites that are available that nobody selected." My mom loved the view of the suite she selected, so that went right out the window. But the fact that they were willing, in what was probably a pretty chaotic mess for them with construction people around and moving people in, they were willing to go that far above and beyond. And then as my mom became ill and had to go in and out of hospital, what I really appreciated was the time they spent making the plans right for her as she was to return, because she had to leave her suite and go to assisted living. And the staff, although we couldn't pay movers to come, the staff actually moved all her belongings into her new suite for us. I'm telling you, above and beyond. And it wasn't just for us that they did that. They were doing that for others as well. The suite she was in was spectacular. So VIVA has the great advantage of being right down in the Whitby Harbor, just off the marina. So it is a lovely space to be at. It's also really close to amenities. There's I can't even come up with the name of it. The Ability Center is right there. So there's a chance you can walk to the Ability Center, and there's tracks and supported pieces above and beyond the pool that they have and their own exercise room and all those things. But there's also restaurants and a drugstore and a grocery store and a pizza shop, all just across the street. So, I mean, location wise, it was spectacular, and it's right off the 401. So as my sisters who live far away had to come to visit, they'd get off, and you're not driving 20 minutes through town to reach mom, you're 2 minutes from the 401. So that was really lovely. And the building was spectacular. It still is spectacular, but I'm not visiting it every day now. So just the setup, if you look at the pictures online, it's absolutely beautiful. And the maintenance is wonderful. Their maintenance, I don't know if they call them managers, but he going above and beyond all the time, does such a fabulous job. You can see the care he has with the whole building and making it shine every day in the little kinds of things, like there's never any little chipped paints. It's all fixed up anytime something happens. And even people moving in and out, the staff from the concierge staff right on up hang drapes for you so you don't mark, the building. There's such a pride of ownership of not only the community members who live there, but every staff member, from the person you meet at the front door to the kitchen cook in the back. So she made some really good new friends. They called them the Three Musketeers. They nicknamed them that. And they had fun all the time. When my mom first arrived, she was able to drive. So she and her friends would go out when they were able. They weren't always able because of COVID. But in addition, they ran all kinds of events. So they would meet for, chair aerobics. My mom had Parkinson's, so she wasn't able to do a lot of balance things, but she would attend chair aerobics with her friends. They would go to movies together in the theater. They would go to crafts. They met for getting their library cards, and the library would come in and they could borrow hard books, because my mom also had an e-reader, but getting the books from the library on loan onto her e-reader was not her forte. Mind you, the staff helped her with that. The staff were willing to help with anything. If we had to set up a Zoom call during COVID, the staff would go to her suite and help her do all of those things as well. There were just so many little things that were different than other places, because, when you go out, they all have prices, they all have, their flyers, they all have all that kind of stuff. And some of them seem to be a little less expensive sometimes than VIVA Whitby Shores or the VIVA, kind of chain. But what you got in return was something way more. Like, for instance, they have and during COVID it shut down, but for a while we lived large. They have what they call perks, which is their gathering space. It's a coffee house. It's open 24 hours a day. The resident, the community member, and all their guests, their family members, whatever, can stop by, help themselves to tea, coffee, fresh cookies, yogurts, cheeses. It changes all the time, fresh fruit. So you don't get charged for any of that. So, if I came over, my mom would say, oh, I feel like a coffee. You want to go downstairs and have it? And we would go downstairs, and I could have, they have a little machine, so you can have hot chocolate or you can have whatever. So all of those pieces were there, and staff would stop by then and talk with us while we were sitting there, make sure my mom had gotten out, make sure, she was feeling comfortable. So you never felt like you were doing the survey to say, oh, how's your care here? They just came by and did that incidentally. It was just a lovely community feeling. And, they also they have on the 7th floor, they have a pub, but they also have a golf simulator. Same deal. We as a family member could come and use a golf simulator while I was there. So I jokingly said to them, do I have to tell my mom I've arrived, or can I just go there? But really, it's that kind of feeling. So they knew you by name, all the staff. It was lovely. The staff at VIVA, even in my mom's passing, were just so lovely. But they talked about throughout, because my mom ended up running for they have a committee there, a members committee. And so my mom was co-chair she was one of the first inaugural co-chairs. And as her medical condition changed, she had to step down from that. But so they ran that. But my mom was always very well put together. She dressed very nicely. She never left the house, without looking perfect. And the same in her suite. And even when they were confined to their suites, my mother got up every day, dressed like she would as if she was going out. And the staff talked about that a lot, about, kind of her character and how much they missed her and how active she was in the community. Oh, dramatically. So first off, my mom lived 2.5 hours away, and I was driving there 3 or 4 times a week because my mom was at a point where she needed a little more support. And she really, things changed pretty quickly for her in her own medical condition. So she realized that, and she wanted to be the person to make the decision about where she was going. So my mom visited probably 10 or 15 homes between Durham region and the Ottawa area. Because I have sisters in the Ottawa area. I also have one in Sault Ste. Marie, but she was not moving there. And then we live down in this area. So she wanted to be close to at least one family member. And VIVA Whitby Shores, hands down, it was a last add-on at a last minute, because a friend said, oh, there's something being built right behind us. So I called on the morning, the last day my mom was viewing places. And they fit us in at the end of the day at like 4:30. They stayed late because my mom was going back to New Hamburg. She signed on the spot. There was no comparison between it and any other location she had been to. Didn't even go into the building to see it at that point. We had to visit it at another location, but even the staff and what they'd done, they had gone through the building and with the construction crew and taken pictures out of every suite's window so that my mother could see her view. I know, we knew then that that was who we wanted to be. When my mom was moving from New Hamburg to Whitby, it was supposed to be ready in November. My mother's house sold early, so she had to move out. So Viva actually arranged for my mom to have a rental suite in Mississauga at another Viva while they were developing. They furnished it for her. She moved in there. She really quite liked it. But that was the third Viva I had come in contact with, because I had visited at Viva Pickering when my mom was checking out Viva to begin with. I'd met the Viva Whitby staff, and then she was living in Viva Mississauga. And truly, one day when I was at Viva Mississauga, I said to the woman, one of the women working there, I said, I'm not sure what it is, but you have a culture that transcends location. I said, I don't know what your training process is, but it's got to be spectacular. And she said to me, oh, that's our orange dot values. So I'm a bit of a research person. So I go into the background and I look up what are Viva's orange dot values. And they exemplify them every single day. There's 5 of them. And I tell you, they really work. When you call there, they say, how can I make your day great? When they answer their phone. And that truly has been what those orange dot values address every time. I wrote them down because I thought I have to tell you what they are, because they exemplify them. They're be a friend, make it better, love what you do, work as a team, and have fun. That's what they expect their staff to do every day. And you can imagine when you exemplify that, it just builds this community that is spectacular. It really is. Do it as soon as you can, because it's well worth it. And it's certainly a jewel here in our region. It really is. The other piece about that is we have recommended a few families move in because a few of our friends have had parents at this age. We're at this age. So, people ask us, and they have moved in, and no one has come back to us and said, oh, it wasn't quite what you said. They've all said, we cannot believe that you were right on, because what you can count on is that they'll always be in your loved one's corner, always. And by so doing that, they were always in our corner too, because they wanted to make certain that we were comfortable with what the decisions were that my mom was making, while always respecting that it was her decision to make and her integrity that was at play here. Investigate the little things. I want them to have a sense of not just kind of the glitz and glam as you enter a place, but what the people do in the place. We went to one place that was really my mother's second choice, but it didn't have water, so it didn't, but it was again what the people did for her. So, and it was standing back and looking at all the little tiny things that they asked my mother that were important to her. I think that's the biggest thing. Finding out, really connecting with her was the biggest piece. It was the quality of the building and giving my mother control. Those two pieces were really important. Location, their willingness to change no, that's not right. So it's location, really their willingness to accommodate my mother is the best way to say that. Willingness to accommodate my mother, even in the entry process on the very first day for her meeting. And also the care of duty that they went forward with so that my mom would feel comfortable making that decision of moving there. And then finally, it really was the quality of the building. We had not seen her actual building except from the outside because we drove by it. It was a beautiful building, but we saw the care of the building in Pickering that was multiple years old and it looked like it had just opened. And that was remarkable to us. Like, you know, we'd been in other buildings and, you know, things looked like they'd worn a bit and should be repaired. There was none of that. And this was a very old building. So we thought, if they can do that here, imagine what it'll be like there. It was interesting, the different places that we went to. Some of the people were great, don't get me wrong. I mean, there were lots of places where people were very accommodating, but some of the places we went to, they spoke to me as if my mother was not the decision maker. And my mother was, and my mother was, she wouldn't call herself a feminist, but my mother really was this very quiet, small feminist. She was a manager in insurance before women were welcomed into that industry. My mom raised girls on her own because my parents had like there were lots of things my mom had done, and so this was this really vibrant woman. And even when we tried to redirect them back to speak to my mother, they would speak to us. So we got none of that at VIVA. They asked my mother's permission about a lot of things. So they said to my mom, can we tell you about this, or would you like to do it alone or with your daughter here? So they asked her permission for all kinds of things so that she felt comfortable and in control, which I thought was wonderful. And then just, you know, even though the building wasn't ready yet and it was all, you know, was not even sided on the outside yet, you could tell the care they had and the enthusiasm that they had for the building. So all of that just wound my mother into this great excitement about this is my place to live. Location and the quality of the building and the enthusiasm of the staff. Okay, that was a comedy of errors and a story we will tell for the rest of our life. Because my mother lived in basically 3,600 square feet and moved into 800 square feet, and she did it in 2 steps. Yeah, so, and she lived 2.5 hours from me. So, and all of my sisters are far away. So it took us about 4.5 or 5 months to go through every aspect of her house. And I would drive out there and we would sort and decide what had to go. My husband would come sometimes and he talked about the donation centers out in my mother's area because they knew him by name. He started saying they'd see our Explorer come and they'd like shut down the lights, you know, like we're closed, we're closed. And then having my sisters come to help select and take pictures and send it. But throughout it all, I just kept thinking, this is really important to my mom. This is important that she feel a part of this and she's not rushed. And so I would, you know, she would clean one little shelf and I would clean out a whole cupboard. And then I'd say to her, what parts do you want, you know? And then, so after we got that all packed, then we had to decide and sort it and what was going to donation and what was going to family and what she was selling. Then we had to think about what she was going to move with her to her first location, because she had to do a 2-step move because VIVA Whitby Shores wasn't open when her house sold. So we had to take the few belongings that we wanted, and you know, she packed way too much to take to her first little station. But we left that. And we took it all, and then what I said, Mom, what doesn't fit, I will take to my house. I'll put it in my basement. We'll leave it there. We hired movers to take everything to storage that she was taking to Whitby. So the movers came, they moved materials to Whitby. My husband and I and my sister came, we moved all her belongings to Mississauga. My mother was exhausted. My sister and I unpacked that day as best we could. We took stuff home with us that would no longer fit. We knew in the first, you know, 5 minutes. It wasn't all going to fit. And then we had to repack it all and move it to Whitby when her new suite opened, and have the movers move her belongings into Whitby. In addition, my mom wanted new furniture, some of it, so she bought new furniture as well. So we had to coordinate moving new furniture in from the place that she had purchased it. So it was really an adventure would be the best way to describe it. Oh yeah, there was, so first off, because they were all moving in carefully around the same times, VIVA scheduled everybody a half day to move in. So that was good because we all had our own opportunities to do that. They had left these lovely little packages in the suites and dropped it off and get some other stuff afterwards, which was very nice. They came by almost every day to check to see how far along my mom was. Did she need any help? Luckily for us, I live close by, so I would go over every day and just help her unpack a little bit more, which was wonderful. But the staff still came by just to make sure that she was still okay. Just because I was there, it didn't change their practice at all. And then, you know, they made certain that there were only a few things running in terms of social events in those early weeks, because, you know, one day there were only 10 people living there, and then there'd be 12, and then, you know, so, but they had gathering times. They down in Perks, they would say, you know, everybody come down at 2 o'clock. We're making fresh cookies, and, you know, we can meet down here today for this. And so there was a chance to get to know each other on the way down. And they really building that small community in the beginning. And my mom felt really lucky to be part of that initial group, because they really felt like this was their home, right? But everybody who moved in afterwards, I think, gets that same feeling, because my mom started to work as one of their volunteers, because every person who moves into VIVA gets assigned a person to help them out over the first day and over the first week. So my mom was one of the volunteers to help people, you know, so you take them to dinner, you show them around the building, because the staff have already done it, but then you get to hear from somebody who's living it. What are the ins and outs? What do you really need to know? So my mom did that until her health failed, including, because my mom had Parkinson's, there was another woman moving in with Parkinson's who was telling VIVA that, and they said, oh, would you like to speak to somebody who lives here with a similar consideration? And they had asked my mom prior to that if they could share that. And the woman said, oh, that would be so helpful. So even in my mom's passing, that woman still reaches out to me from time to time now, just to say, you know, how are you doing? Checking on things. So they really do think of everything. Here's another piece, just to give you a sense of what it's like as a community and a staff. They take 1 million pictures. So last year during COVID, they were in their suites. They couldn't come out of their suites. They were locked in. And my mom had her first birthday at VIVA. And so we asked if they would help us do something for her. And so we couldn't get close to her, but they helped her get her coat on, come downstairs out to their outdoor patio. And we hid out there, and my two of my youngest grandchildren, one of my sisters from Ottawa, and they filmed it all. So and took pictures of it all. So they surprised my mother. They helped in the surprise. She had no idea my sister was coming. But they worked through all of that for her, and because she was locked in her suite, right? Yeah. And after she passed away, they emailed me. They said, we're just going through all our pictures, and we found a collection, all the pictures that your mom was in that we have. We're just sending them to you, so you have all these memories of her here. Yeah, I don't think there's a whole, I mean, I probably would have reached out to VIVA earlier. Okay, I'll tell you what I would have done differently. What I didn't do was I didn't make a comprehensive list of all the homes, retirement homes in my community. I didn't do that. We went on just where people had told us. And so there were a few that we thought, you know, maybe we could have looked at that one. And we hadn't, but that's the only thing I might have done differently, is just been more comprehensive in looking at that. But we looked at some of the big ones, we looked at some of the small ones, but my mom really wanted water. So that's really it was the deciding factor. Yeah. And, you know, when my mom was really ill at the end, And she was back, she got out of the, and this tells you the quality of what they did. There were, during her stay in the hospital, they reached out to me numerous times to make sure, is there anything news? They did consulting phone interviews with the hospital staff in terms of, could my mom come back? Couldn't she come back? And we actually had given our notice at one point, and my mom was like, had 9 lives. She just bounced back a few times, and we were like, she was on death's door and then came back to life. And so we finally realized she was going to be able to come back to VIVA, but she'd have to move into assisted living. Even after I'd given them formal notice, I'd sent the formal notice to say, she's moving out, this is it, we're done, we're going to long-term care. And then when she moved in, so the staff in assisted living just constantly were part of the process all the way throughout that piece. And they would come in, and when I had to stay there, they let me stay overnight. And in any other location, even in the hospital, I wasn't supposed to be visiting, but because of my mom's condition, I got special permission that I could come in to see her, but no one else could. She moved back. We had looked at hospice as she was getting closer to passing, or moving back to a palliative ward in the hospital. But staying at VIVA, they said, we'll palliate her here. So they worked through the palliative process by having, the team from the hospital come out to VIVA to be a part of her. And they made special arrangements so that each of my sisters could come and see my mom before she passed away. And in a time, it's gonna make me a little weepy, sorry.
Okay.
But in a time when, so many people have lost loved ones through COVID and they couldn't see them, VIVA made that possible. So I felt so guilty all the way along because I got to see mom all the time, but my sisters couldn't because we were just in that scenario. But VIVA stepped beyond the bounds and said, we can make this work. These are our requirements. These are the stipulations. This is what you have to do. And each of my sisters got to say goodbye.
For more information about this community, you can visit their profile at comfortlife.ca.